Hi, welcome to the Potter's Roundtable. This is Pottery Shorts, a series of short pottery topics done on the fly. Hi, this is Pottery Shorts, and today's topic is how does an oxiprobe work? What is an oxiprobe? Well, an oxiprobe is basically an oxygen sensor used to check for the reducing atmosphere in a fuel-burning pottery kiln, a wood-burning kiln or coal-burning kiln or gas-burning kiln. And a reducing atmosphere basically means that there's very low oxygen present. So it's called an oxiprobe or an oxygen sensor because you're looking to see how much oxygen is present. And if there's very low oxygen, then it means you have a reducing atmosphere. Interestingly, that oxiprobes are also used in your car or in in vehicles to measure how efficiently your engine is burning. So here's an example of an oxiprobe. In a car, however, it's usually called an oxygen sensor. And this is one that's taken from a car. And it works exactly the same, only in the car, it's used to measure how efficiently the gasoline is burning. And whereas in pottery, we want reduction in a kiln, in a car, you don't want reduction. You want to make sure that the fuel is burning completely and not producing a lot of carbon monoxide and not creating a lot of air pollution. So one of the main sources when your check engine light comes on, one of the first things to check is to see whether your oxiprobe has gone bad. It might be that simple. But that's one of the sensors that's hooked up to your check engine indicator is your oxiprobe. And if your oxiprobe isn't working correctly and monitoring your exhaust, then your check engine light comes on. So it's used to check in your car, kind of the same thing as in the kiln. It's looking at the mixture of fuel and air and seeing what the combination is. So what does it actually consist of? Well, the system consists of the probe, what I'm calling the probe or the sensor, the same way we talked about in another short, we talked about thermocouples, and the thermocouple is the temperature sensor. Well, in this case, the probe actually contains the oxygen sensor. So there's a probe, and it's connected to some kind of a readout. And nowadays, this is the new development, so they're all basically digital readouts. And so how does it actually work? Well, the oxygen probe actually consists of, in the tip of the oxygen probe, there's a little piece of specialized ceramic. It's called zirconia, or it's zirconium oxide. And this is it's the same ceramic. This is a ceramic knife. I don't know whether you've seen these, and they are advertised because they hold their shape, they never need sharpening. Well, it's the same ceramic. This is a zirconium oxide knife blade with a plastic handle. And it's the same ceramic that's used in the oxygen sensor. And the way it works is that it's set up like this so that the probe sticks into the kiln. So this is the kiln wall here. This is the kiln wall. And the probe sticks inside the kiln with this little oxygen sensor on the tip with wires, electrical wires coming out. And so the outside of the probe is exposed to the gas in the kiln, but the inside of the probe actually is open to the air from the outside of the kiln. So the probe, the tip is actually sort of, on one side it sees the gas on the kiln, and on the other side it sees normal air. So what it's actually looking at is the difference in oxygen content between the air and what's in the kiln. And the way it actually works is, when you have if there's a difference in an oxygen level, it actually makes zirconium metal atoms move in the ceramic. They actually move in one direction, and to offset that, electrons, an electrical current, moves in the opposite direction, and we can measure that. Okay? So the bigger the difference in between the oxygen outside and inside, the more the oxygen atoms move, and the more the electrical current moves, and therefore the higher the signal we get. Okay? And so here's an example of some typical numbers that you might see on an oxiprobe. So the electrical signal, it's reading in millivolts. That's thousandths of a volt. And then this is the atmosphere condition that it represents, and the oxygen content measured at 1650 degrees Fahrenheit, because that's where this data was taken from, what it actually represents. So if the millivolts are reading between 0.01 and 0.09, that means it's oxidizing. That's normal air. Because what that means is that's not a very strong signal. So if there's not a very strong signal, then zirconium atoms aren't moving and electrons aren't moving, and there's not much difference because there isn't much of a difference in the oxygen, so not much of a current is going to be generated. If I start to get millivolts in the range of 0.1 to 0.2, this is a neutral atmosphere, meaning there really isn't a whole, there's a little bit of oxygen present, but there is definitely not a lot of reducing conditions. So it means I've got a low oxygen content, not none, but low. So I've got like 0.5 to 0.05%, pretty low, okay? Now when I get up to a signal that's 0.25 to 0.7 millivolts, I'm in reducing conditions, and I've got basically like almost no oxygen present, which means that I've got mostly, in this case, it would be carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide present. So this would be, I'd be looking for this kind of a signal to indicate that I'm in the reducing conditions, okay? Just incidentally, the way these, I won't go into it now, but the way these probes work, I can actually also use the same setup to measure the temperature. So a lot of times these commercial oxiprobes that you can buy, not only can they give you an indication of the reducing conditions, but they can also measure the temperature by a different principle. But by measuring the resistance to the flow of the electrons, they can get an indication of the temperature. And one final comment I found personally is that some of the oxiprobes tend to be fairly finicky. They're fairly sensitive when you're using them, because if you think about it, it's sensing the gases. So if the gas, if you're, let's say you have a gas burning kiln, and as the flame is moving past the probe, if it changes direction, then the gas composition changes, so the meter changes, the reading. So they tend to bounce around a lot. So it depends on your setup as to whether I think they can be useful or not. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the presentation, please like it and subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends. This way we get more viewers of our videos. Also, check out our website, www.hfclay.com. We'd really like to thank our patrons for supporting our educational efforts, such as these videos. And if you'd like to consider becoming a patron, go to patreon.com and look for the Potter's Roundtable.